paying attention to it. And they get to the point where it's at the second chamber and ready for passage there, and all of a sudden you got a lot of issues. So we have been very thoughtful in this process in making sure that we are addressing each issue brought by every other interest group, making sure that it doesn't dilute the purpose of the bill, which is to keep these groom trails in good condition, and keep, you know, other vehicles off of them, and make sure that they are used for snowmobile use. And so the bill looks different than what we had it in the House, but it is in a better spot because legislation gets tricky and you got to write a bunch of stuff out. We just are very methodical about making sure we retain the point of the bill and that we are not at all jeopardizing the goal of keeping those trails in good condition. On that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam to talk to you about the money aspect of it and the other things that we're working on. And then I've got to get out of here for a meeting pretty soon, but I'm available for some questions.
Well, Tab made that part easy because she covered the bill and kind of where everything's at very well for us. But no, like Tab said, Karen's done a terrific job advocating for this crew. Anytime we've had her in Lansing, I can rattle off a list of 15 to 20 at least legislators that go out of their way to try and connect with Karen or say hi and talk with her, which just makes it so much easier when we come in with a legislative ask or a request, because they already have that personal relationship there. So that benefit is just, you know, tremendous. My name is Sam Olson. I've been an associate with the firm for 2 years now, been with the firm for roughly three and a half, and worked in the legislature prior to that. But like Tab said, we're working right now with a couple more stakeholders on our bill with Representative Borton, but we're hopefully at the finish line of hashing out kind of the language. And then once we get a final product, we'll just make sure that it still achieves our end goal, while not having any unintended consequences. You know, that's just the one concern that you see sometimes with legislation is, you know, either the department screws it up in how they interpret it once it's passed, or an interest group doesn't realize the impact it could have. And so we're just trying to ensure that we hash all that out before we get to the actual finish line. But it is helpful that we're in the second chamber now and have already gone through the first chamber. Once it finally passes the Senate, it'll go back to the House for a concurrence vote, and then it'll be on its way to the governor. So we'll just keep, Karen and everybody involved in that. But, you know, Karen did a great job testifying the first time. It was also very helpful when Karen testified about the issue we have with the DNR in the appropriations process. Chairwoman Aller's been very helpful and involved on that, as well as Representative Borton and Representative Beeson. They are interested and concerned about what the DNR is doing and why it's not necessarily releasing the funds. But on top of that, Karen and we were able to work to secure extra funding that this group hasn't received in the past in the previous supplemental in December. So that's something we're really proud of as a team, that the three of us were able to really kind of rally around and get legislators to realize that they do have this money available, and here's why they should, use it towards enhancing our snowmobile and ORV recreational activity. So going forward, we'll continue working with Representative Aller and Borton to make sure that the issue that we're having with the DNR is resolved. That's something that they're keenly aware of, and we're trying to figure out in exactly why hasn't the DNR released that money yet. And then on top of that, just ensuring that our position within the budget as it moves forward is the same as it has been in the past, that we receive the money that is supposed to be allocated for you guys. But other than that, if you guys have any questions, or if Karen, if you think there's anything else we should add, on top of just this legislation, we always keep Karen apprised of any legislation that could impact your guys' industry, whether it was your guys' idea or the group's idea or not. Sometimes representatives and senators just have a constituent or get their own idea and introduce something. So anytime we notice that, we keep Karen involved to figure out exactly where and how this impacts my Sorba and the industry, and then how we can either be of help or kind of let that legislator know, hey, this is going to have a negative consequence. This is not what you're intending. So we do keep you guys in the loop for anything kind of snowmobile, ORV, recreational related.
Yes, you do. You do a great job of that. The money, the second money that Sam was talking about is the Miracle Million. And you guys should all know about that Miracle Million at this point. That's what we've deemed that, the 1.15 million, Sam, that you guys helped us to receive. So anybody have any questions for our lobbyists and how things work and where it's going and anything else you need to know?
Karen, Don Britton, I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Um, The DNR has been having all these meetings by computer or whatever, when nothing in person. So I assume that there's got to be savings made because there's no traveling for DNR people. Is there any way we can have an accounting on why we're being charged the same amount of money as if we're in normal process?
That's something we can work with Representative Aller, because it's her budget that she controls. And that's something I can loop Karen in on, and we can ask her to she's always very helpful and more than willing to poke the DNR and figure out exactly where they're, wasting money potentially, or, not necessarily using it as properly.
Yeah, they're, obviously for 2 years or more, we've had meetings by Zoom or Microsoft. And obviously there's no travel expenses or anything for these people. I would have to think there's got to be some savings there.
We can talk to Karen, not Karen, but to Sue and find out.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll keep you in the loop, Don, when that comes back. I will alert the SAW committee. We can discuss it there.
I think that's a big issue. It's got to be a substantial amount because there's no travel time there.
Yeah, and what they're paying out to all the committees for all of us to travel to those meetings. So where he's going with that, Sam, is for me, as I sit on the SAW committee, they would pay for me to go to those meetings, so I have mileage and things like that. So that's the money so all these meetings that we've missed for that time is what he's talking. That's what he's referring to, right?
Okay, perfect. That makes sense. That's something easy.
Yeah. But yet I don't see that they've reduced what their appropriation is to fund the DNR from our snowmobile program or the ORV program. So that's what Don, I think, is referring to. Am I correct, Don?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. That is definitely doable.
Yep. Anyone else? Because I know Tabitha's got a meeting at 5:30, so she's going to be scooting out of here real soon. Any other quick questions? You guys covered it so well, they got nothing. They got nothing.
Or they'll wait till after we
Love
leave
that.
and then the question comes. Yeah.
What's that, Scott?
I guess, and I'm not sure, I didn't hear Tabitha really well, but is there any hope that HB 4535 will be in place before the end of 2022 for the next season?
That is,
Absolutely.
yep, Scott, that'd be our goal.
Great.
Definitely. So right now we're just finishing due diligence in the Senate, but we're over halfway through the process, luckily. So definitely that would be our goal.
For lots of us, Sam, they feel, and like I did, that when it didn't pass in a year's time, it probably wasn't going to What you have explained and Tabitha has explained to me is this is real normal. What we're in right now, guys, is very, very normal. It in no way,
So
shape, or
normal.
form implies that this is not going to pass or it's a dead issue. It is not a dead
Yep.
issue. We are still getting drafts from the Senate to change the language to make this work. So it's definitely not a dead issue. So don't give up hope. Keep pushing for that and keep contacting your representatives. That's the very best thing y'all can do is contact them and say, we need this.
Absolutely. The first year is just the warm up. I gotta run, guys. Have a
Okay.
great night.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Tab.
you.
Thank you, Sam, for so much for all your time. I appreciate it more than you know.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So tonight we have Mr. Don Reed, long time groomer program. When we have Terry Barton. Terry Barton is from Southwest Michigan, has a long time sponsor, been in the groomers since the 70s. But as with anything we know, there's technique involved. Many times that technique takes years to establish. Producing a great tail takes time and commitment, as most of you know. Over the years of service, these guys have spent many hours perfecting the art of trail grooming. Here to share some of the secrets tonight, I would like to introduce to you a couple of longtime groomer operators, Mr. Terry Barton with West Michigan Snowmobile Council, and I'm pretty sure most of you know or have heard the stories or a duck joke or two from Mr. Don Reed. You would all please mute your microphones and use your raise a hand button to ask if you have questions. I would appreciate it. Take it away, boys.
Mr. Don, are you out there?
What? You're muted, Don. Don't mute yourself, Don. We can't hear duck jokes.
Good.
Is that better?
Better.
There you go.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah.
Terry, start it.
I got it
Hey,
on.
what I'm gonna do, I'm not sure what we're gonna talk about, but let me give you a little background. I'm Terry Barton, Western Michigan Snowmobile Council. The council was started back when we went to the state trails. At one time, we had 10 clubs. We're down to 4 now. And as we know, the lower end of the state has lost a lot of snow coverage from the old days when we used to have the track trucks. You know, they were like a coffin when we drove them. Anyway, right now we've got some really nice equipment on the Western Michigan Snowmobile Council trail system. Then at Allegan Club, Byron Center Snowmobile Association, Yankee Springs Snowmobile Association, and Wayland. Them are the 4 clubs that are participating in it. Allegan is its own grant sponsor, and they have their own groomer system. So they don't really come up into the Western Michigan Snowmobile Council area. We go from Shelbyville all the way to Alto to Hilliards and connect with the Allegan system. This year we've had some grooming. Normally what we try to do, because of the lack of snow down here, is we try to prep our farmlands and woodlots prior to the event. Unfortunately, this year we couldn't disc. So what we normally try to do is we go disc all the chisel plowed areas where our trails go. And again, this year we couldn't. So the first snow we got, we went right out. We happen to have a 6150 yard John Deere with a Adobe drag. It's an 8-foot to 14-foot with the wings down. And we used that to go ahead across that chisel plowed area. So our trails did get dressed. And when we did have snow, we had some really cool riding. Mr. Don, you got anything else?
Okay, well, I know doing the Zoom thing is kind of a difficult thing when you start talking about equipment. So tonight, I guess what I'd like to do, I've got some quick topics to talk about. So it's not going to get really in depth just because of what we're dealing with the Zoom. First of all, as a groomer operator, let's say first of all, with grooming operations, your attitude has to be, hey, I'm here, I'm going to take care of the trails. And there is a battle with moguls that a groomer operator deals with on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes the moguls can be 4 to 5 feet tall, I've seen it, and sometimes they're small choppies. And I guess that's kind of with that thought process. Let's chat about moguls. What causes moguls? I just seen here on Facebook the last week and a half, they had a nice article on Facebook talking about moguls. What causes moguls? And the remedy to take care of that. I don't know if anybody has seen that article on Facebook. It come out of Minnesota, I do believe. It was a pretty good article. They talk about the formation of moguls, what causes moguls. Is there anybody out there that knows what really causes moguls?
Snowmobile suspension.
There you go. Snowmobile suspension is one facet of that. The other factor is the speed of the snowmobile and the variations of speed of the snowmobile, what causes moguls. The other mogul entity that actually really causes moguls, and I call these in our inverted moguls, I call them snowdrifts. Because once the snowdrift gets onto the trail, snowmobiles hits that snowdrift, and then they'll start making inverted bumps. In other words, called inverted moguls, I call them. And many years ago, going across the plains up in Grand Marais area, that's when I really first noticed it. I said, wow, these are going to cause havoc. Next thing you know, yes, they did. After about 180, 200 sleds went across all these drift areas, what do we have? We had moguls, or classified as bumps. Does that make sense to everybody? So, in other words, if we had no traffic on the trails, you're groomed, and you had a heavy wind and you had drifts, then once the snowmobiles come across that, they'll make moguls. It all depends about traffic also, because with the amount of traffic, with the speed, the suspension, you're going to find moguls, because that's the nature of the beast. End of story. Without traffic, we wouldn't have to groom, except for maybe some drifts. Everybody with me? Okay, let's talk about what the operator, again, we talked about a little bit about attitude. Let's talk about what the operator really needs to know. Anybody can get in the vehicle and drive. Pretty much we all drive a vehicle. So you can have anybody get into that piece of equipment and drive. But as operators, that is not what we're there for. We are there to maintain smooth and safe trails and the techniques how to do that. So let's talk about the power unit. There's a power unit and also the implement or the drag. First of all, the operator has to understand the operation of the power unit. And I think a maintenance scenario needs to be in place, because there's only so long that you're going to run that piece of equipment, just like anything else. If you do not pull maintenance, guess what happens? You're going to wear it out. It's not going to perform unless you want to use horses. But even horses have maintenance. They need to be fed. The hooves need to be changed. So you're going to have maintenance regardless of what you use. So a power unit would be from a tractor to a piston bully to a tucker. Snowmobiles, years ago, Alpine skidoos were the power unit to pull small spring drags. That's one facet. So in order to be able to groom, the operator needs to understand what piece of equipment he has, and does he understand the maintenance portion of it. Let's go to the implement or the drag. The drag is there to process the snow. In other words, where you're running the power unit, that drag is processing the snow, and that snow is going to process through several different knives and go through a pan that hopefully flattens out the snow that's been processed. What do you mean by processing the snow? Processing the snow actually warms that snow up and then flattens out moguls. There's another issue we need to talk about. I know I'm jumping a little bit, but road graders, and I'll say drags are kind of the same thing. If you do not cut to the bottom of the mogul, guess what happens? The mogul returns quicker than hell. If you cut the mogul to the bottom, you process the snow, the pan hits it, then you have a nice trail behind you. What's the other consideration? Time that trail needs to set. Does everybody understand what I mean by trail needs to set? If you have snowmobilers that follow you as you're grooming, that trail will not set. You will not have a good trail. It'll be back to shit in no time. If that trail can set 2 to 3 to 4, 5 hours without snowmobiles on it, if you have good temperatures, that trail is going to set. You're going to have a nice, smooth trail. That's what we're out there to do, is have a smooth trails for snowmobiling. Let's, I know I'm running fast here because I don't want to have you guys start falling asleep on me, but the drag is a very important portion of that combination unit, but also the front blade. I've seen so many grooming entities that run around with the power unit front blade in the air, 3 feet off the trail. You're missing a portion of your grooming, especially when you get into corners that are banked. If you do not cut them corners down, or if you have 5 operators and 2 operators cut the corners down, guess what? You're still going to have banked corners. And this is not a NASCAR race. So these corners need to be pulled back in and not pushed off the trail, but pull back in on the corners and keep that inside corner from getting so icy, and brings the snow back in, and you'll have a longer trail. Again, it can be done. It should be done. And if it's not being done, you maybe ought to think about the process that you're missing by not using that front blade. Now, I know there's places in the trails that sometimes the blade, maybe you don't want to put the blade down because maybe there's some stumps in that area, and I understand that. But in all reality, them stumps should have been marked pre-season so you know they're there, so the operator has an idea, because you're not going to remember everything of that trail. And it brings me to another part of an operator. That operator should know the trail that he is grooming. So when he starts grooming, he doesn't have to guess after the next corner, is it a straight stretch or is it another corner? You should be aware of what you're grooming, where you're at on that trail, so you can get prepared for the next corner or a straight stretch. Does that make sense? It should. Let's talk road crossings. Road crossings is a very, very touchy subject, and it should be a PR subject for counties and states. When you come to an intersection of a county road, if you take care of the intersection, you will not have issues with snowmobiles dragging snow into the road as bad. And what I'm trying to explain to you is, you come to an intersection, and when you go across that intersection, obviously the blade's going to be up. Your drag should have been up a long time ago. It wheels down, or panning until you get to the very end and put the wheels up before you get to pavement. When you get to the other side of that pavement, that front blade should have been down, and push that snow down the trail 30 to 40 yards, because when the snowmobiles come back across that, if there's not snow to drag into the roadway, guess what? You won't have an issue with a lot of snow buildup. The nature of the beast, the snowmobile is going to drag some snow, but if you take them and get them intersections pushed back so there's not a lot of snow at the edge of the road, and then along with that, banks on either side of your trail should be pushed back, so when snowmobilers come out to the intersection, they don't have to crawl clear out to the middle of the street to look down the road to see if there's anything coming. Again, that's a safety issue that I think sometimes has missed here in the last probably, I would say the last 35 to 40 days, I've probably clocked in 1,500 miles. And under that 1,500 miles of snowmobiling, I've seen a lot of intersections that are pretty dangerous. It wouldn't take much, but again, just like corners, it has to be maintained on a daily or couple 3 days a week. If there's snow, if you have 8 or 10 inches of snow, you need to take care of it. You need to push that stuff back, because we can help protect some of the snowmobilers that really don't understand what they're doing out there by doing a little bit extra for the trails itself. Terry, I'm running. Do you like to speak up here a little bit and give me a break?
I think you're doing dandy. But I will say this, you talked about moguls and how a snowmobiler can measure whether the groomer operator is using the drag properly is that first run through that mogul. If that blows out, that groomer operator needs to be trained that the cutters aren't down far enough. And that's one of the biggest challenges we had down in our area is it's a time thing. When I'm out, the cutters are down, but it takes me probably, if I put them up and I'm just panning, I could take an hour off the groom.
Yes.
By putting it down, I add an hour to the groom. But once the trail is flat, and of course with that Dobie drag, it's an 8,000 pound drag, that thing is set. So I just had one of our presidents, he was up north somewhere. I'm not going to point fingers, it don't make any difference. He was on a trail system and the trails were groomed, and he said they're superb. He couldn't believe how nice they were. He went into another grooming area and he no more got in there and hit a mogul and it blew out. So it's something that happens through the state. I mean, it's just this. But Don, I don't know what else we want to talk about. I think you covered everything that I would want to cover, but I appreciate your time on that. But training on that is really, really essential.
And that's true, because there's several different type of drags out there, and everyone, just like when you start talking about cars and pickup trucks, everybody thinks Ford's great. A lot of guys think Chevy's great, Dodge is great. They all do the same thing. They carry your backside from place to place, just like a drag. A drag can be set up improperly, like you just said, Terry, and then your mogul's not going to be cut down. And then there's two types of drags. You have a drag, one that will carry snow, and then you have a drag that doesn't carry snow, and which you can utilize in warmer weather because you don't have to worry about it balling up in the drag itself. The problem with groomer operators that use drags that carry snow, they get a tendency to not cut the mogul because they know they have snow in the drag that will fill that low spot and it'll look beautiful. Now, if that trail has a chance to set for 5 hours, that mogul is not going to blow out as quick. But if you have sleds that blast over top of that within 45 minutes, you will see that mogul appear big time, because that snow that filled that hole is not compacted enough and doesn't have time enough to set and freeze. So the issue I see is, if you're using a drag that can carry snow, which is fine, but you still, first of all, the knives in that drag, or knives or blades, however you want to call that, they need to be adjusted properly. So when you start cutting, the side rails of that drag does not hold that cutting blade up, so you cannot cut moguls out. So that's a very important issue with drags. It needs to be properly set up, or you'll just beat your head against the wall. And then guess what? We're wasting monies that could be someplace else, that a grooming entity that really cares and wants to groom. I really like to talk.
Don, you got one question here. I don't know
Okay,
if you
go
want to
ahead.
do questions while we're going, or if you would rather wait.
Let's do it, because a lot of times
Okay.
the guys go, oh man, I forgot because I didn't get a chance.
Okay. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, Don, back on your road crossings, we're fortunate. We have a doobie drag and we got a scraper. We also got a blade on the front of the bully. But what I find is whoever groomed before, we run a loop and they don't hit that side. So when you're approaching the road, you got a lot of snow on that side. So you can't get it with the drag. And what I found, if it's loose enough, you can back drag with the front blade. And if that doesn't work, I put the blade down and grade it right up to the road and then go up over it and then pull it back with a blade. Works really well.
Yep, it does. And here's the other take. We got to remember, once you set your backside in that seat, you're there to groom and make sure the trail is smooth and safe. My take would be, and I've talked to a lot of guys about loops where we're from in a lot of places, you go out and come back so you can catch both sides of the road. The other way takes longer, but if there's a lot of snow built up, is once you clear that far side of the road clear, and if you can see to back up, you can back up that road and you can rejock yourself. So you're pointing the other direction and clean that back a ways and then back around. It's a lot of work, but you know what? That's the whole reason why we're there. Unless there's a plan that when you get done, the following day, is there going to be somebody going back out that way so you can to take that reverse side? But I know when you make a loop, it's a hell of a lot different than going out and coming back.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I one other comment, you talked about spending time out there. Older guy in our club, I asked him when I started grooming, how long does it take to groom? He says, well, I volunteer. And when I volunteer myself for 24 hours. It might take me 8 hours or it might take me 20 hours to do that trail, but it's going to be done right.
There you go. And I found out over the years, if you have equipment operators that you get a chance to get into the fold and want to groom, a lot of times a dozer operator or a grader operator makes a really good groomer operator because they're used to working slow and they're used to working to make sure that the grade is set fine. So a lot of times that happens and it works great. I know I always joke about truck drivers. Sometimes they don't make the best groomer operator, and nothing against them because I know a lot of truck drivers that do make awesome groomer operators, but their mentality is we got to get from point A to point B, and time is money. And this is where that comes into play. So I'm going to switch to this because I wanted to talk about this because I noticed through my travels here the last 30 days or whatever. And I don't do a lot of night riding, but sometimes I do. There's a lot of groomer operators that want you to get by them at night. And a lot of times I think they get frustrated because guess what? Your lights are on bright as hell and a snowmobiler can't see you. So my take is once you get situated, you see snowmobiles come by or coming from the front. If you kick the brakes off, kick the rest of your light off, and then flip your interior light on so they can see you. And so they also can see that there is a path between the groomer and the side of the trail that they can make it through. You make it easier for them so they can see. Because I can guarantee you that them groomer lights are a hell of a lot brighter than that snowmobile light. And the same thing when they come up from behind you. All you have to do is get set, and because they'll follow you. And then if you flick your lights in the back to let them know they can go around you, and then shut your lights off the back, and then flip your interior light on and put your hand out, kind of wave them and give them say, hey, have a good one, have a good night. It makes a lot of difference. And we've been doing that for a long, long time. When I was training operators that you can't see that. And this the last couple of years, I just really hadn't talked about that until like the other night I was out and the operator wanted us to go by. So I stopped up. I said, it'd be easier if you shut your big lights off so we can see that you want us to come by. Again, just something small, but hey, it's something to think about.
Yeah, and just another comment on Richard's about how long does it take to be out grooming? The more pride the operator has in the quality of the trail, the better job they're gonna do. And sometimes you think, well, that shouldn't even have to be said. But you'd be surprised that some folks get out there and like Don said, all they want to do is drive. Well, that's not grooming. The other thing down in our area is we put in, about 1,000, 1,500 signs every year. We have to mark our trails, take them back out. And what we try to coach our folks that are marking them trails is move them stakes 20 foot out. That groomer, we have an 8-foot groomer with a Tucker 1000. And then we've got the Dolby. When the fins are down, I can do 14 foot. But some folks are going back to the days where they're marking their trail 15 foot. And that tunnels the snowmobilers in and they tear them trails out twice as fast. So the coaching is the wider the trail, the better we can widen that out, less traffic. You don't tunnel them in. Just a comment there, Don. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, let's talk about the
Yeah.
front drag again. I meant,
You
Sorry,
have
go
one
ahead.
more, you have one more hand up here, Don. It's been up for a
Okay,
while.
I don't-
Scott,
I don't-
Scott Lacombe? Scott, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I got a question. I just want to know what your take is on nighttime grooming versus daytime grooming.
well,
And
that,
and/or 24/7 grooming.
okay,
What's
let
the
me,
effect on the trail?
okay. I was going to address that and I can do that now. Okay, here's the take. The best time to groom, obviously, is at night. Because hopefully a lot of the snowmobilers are back to their hotel or home or whatever. And so you have a perfect opportunity to take and groom the trails, push the corners in, and with that comes set time. So when you groom at night, that is the best time. And I know there's some people that can't groom at night or because of volunteers, they don't have the time to do it. And they have to leave it, say 6, 7 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning. So the take on daytime grooming, the take for me was, and we did it for years and years, if we found out that we had traffic that was way out of bounds, so in other words, way above normal traffic, and that happens a lot in the UP when the snow is pretty much zero below the bridge. So then all the traffic, all the snowmobiling comes and gets concentrated in the UP. Prime example, if you leave at 6 o'clock at night, if you can leave at 8 o'clock, it'd be better, but if you leave at 6 o'clock and you have a 12-hour run, so that puts you back at 6 at night, okay? So if the traffic still is bad, excuse me, I said that wrong. If you leave at 6 at night, you come back 6 in the morning, okay? So if the traffic's really bad, and that groomer operator is gonna be able to tell you that, hey, there's a crap load of snowmobiles, and by the time you get out to the far end, it's 6 hours to get out there when you come back. So now it's still laying there 6 hours, and you've got 400 or 500 or a couple hundred sleds. What you're doing is you are, by grooming during the day, you're cutting down the moguls. So when that nighttime operator gets out there, he is not fighting 2.5 foot moguls, not trying to cut down corners that were blown out. So it's going to be manageable for him to be able to do a better groom at night if you groom during the day. And we did that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We done it on a Tuesday because we had 1,500 sleds that came through Trail 8 that made the corner go towards Granbury. So there is a purpose for grooming during the day. Some of it is because of manpower that, hey, that's the only time they can groom. Well, it's better to do that than not have it groomed for 3 days and then get your ass beat when you get a chance to get out there and try to take care of the trail. Will the trail set during the day? Most likely not, because the whole reason why you're out there is because you got a lot of traffic. but it will give that operator at night a hell of a lot easier time to try to get that trail back into shape. Instead of taking him 10 hours or 14 hours, he may be able to do that run in a normal time versus if he did not groom during the day, now you're fighting with 2.5-foot moguls. And if it's warm during the day, and by the time he gets out to the far end, if it got really, really cold, the other night was a prime example. I left here, it was 10 degrees. By the time I got 3.5 hours out, it was 7 below. And you could tell by then it was starting to set. So I hope I answered your question there, Scott. The reason to groom during the day is to try to maintain the trail good enough for the operator to groom at night to be able to do a better job.
Don, I'd like to make a comment about equipment. One of the things that we've had the ability to monitor is with the Tucker with an 8-foot arrow drag, and then with the deer with the doobie drag, the amount of time that I need to be out with the doobie drag and the John Deere compared to the arrow is about half. Because of the equipment, the heavier the equipment, the heavier the drag, the less I have to do down in my area. Now, I'm not dealing with the snow you folks deal with in the UP and upper lower, but so at first we thought cost-wise, gee, this is going to be pretty expensive, but we're actually grooming less with the bigger equipment than we are the smaller equipment. They almost have to groom 5 days a week, where I have to groom 3 days a week. Just a little comment there.
Let me piggyback on this night and day grooming also. Along with all that, guess what happens when you have to work on a trail that has 2-foot moguls? That piece of equipment is going to work a hell of a lot harder. You're going to have chances for that piece of equipment to break down because you're working that piece of equipment harder than it really needs to be worked. So if you manage the moguls to keep them lower, that piece of equipment is not going to get its ass beat. So guess what there? Now we're not going to spend as much money for maintenance because that piece of equipment is not pushing 3 to 2-foot moguls. It may be pushing 8 or 10 inches of mogul, which is going to be easier on that piece of equipment. So the longevity for our fleet is better to do it that way. I've heard through the years that all you're doing is wasting money. Well, that's not totally true because if you're in a snow belt area and you see moguls getting really terrible, if you do a few daytime grooms to help offset that night grooming, you're not going to be breaking front blades because let's face it, not a piece of equipment out there was made for snow grooming. It's either a modified farm tractor or a modified ski hill. And even with the Tucker wasn't made for snow grooming. It was mainly made for personnel transportation. So that is also another modified piece of equipment. So there really is not a piece of equipment out there that we can actually say it's a trail groomer. That's something to ponder also. So again, these are not dozers. So if we wait till the corners get banked sky high and your moguls are butt ass deep to a draft, we're going to be beating on pieces of equipment. And we have a hard enough problem right now acquiring money to do maintenance and acquiring equipment to last this program.
You have a question, Don?
Go ahead.
Joe, go ahead. Joe Chavis?
Hi, Don. How you doing?
Wonderful.
Talking about your equipment, a number of clubs like our clubs, we have 2 different types of power units, and getting the operators to learn the capabilities of those different power units, because each type of machine, it can do more than others or less than others, and learning those capabilities is important too for the operators to know.
You're totally correct. Matter of fact, through the years, there was times that we had operators that we only allowed them to utilize a certain power unit because we understood their abilities, and some of it was just
That's
because
right.
of inexperience. And once they were with us for a while, hey, they became good operators and they could use the other equipment. But you're correct. Again, that's knowing that piece of
Yep.
equipment that you're in and being properly trained. So if you take a guy out and give him 2 runs, is he qualified? Hell no. He's not going to be qualified. But it takes time in the seat, but you can't throw somebody in the seat and say, there you go, learn. He's going to have to learn some of it, but he needs the basics. He needs to understand what is going on with that piece of equipment and why it needs to be done this way instead of thrown to the
Exactly.
wolves. Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
I got a question for you, Don.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about speed grooming?
Yes. Okay,
I-
let's talk about speed. I'm sorry, do you have something else? Okay, let's talk about speed. Speed is important. A lot of times when we talk about grooming speed, there's different variables. Again, how much snow that has just fallen overnight? What is the conditions of the trail? What is the operator's experience? And what kind of traffic we have? So let's take a nighttime run. The operator leaves at 6 o'clock, so it's pretty much dark. The temp's 23 degrees at the time he leaves. The high temp of the day was say 26, 27. So he only got a 3-degree difference. So when he takes off, he's, obviously when he comes out of the barn, and we talk about this, you back out the groomer out of the barn. Hopefully, if you have a barn, if you don't, your steel's already cold. But once you back that groomer out of the barn, you really probably need to make another walk around and give that groomer a chance. I should say, give that drag a chance to cool down on the steel. And a lot of times you've got to travel a little ways before you get to the trail. Once you get to the trail, the speed of grooming is really going to determine on the operator's experience, what the snow conditions are, how much snow is on the trail. The rule of thumb is from 3 to 11 miles an hour. Now, you can groom at 10 miles an hour. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're on a straight stretch, there's not a hell of a lot going on, and you can process that snow really well, that's fine. But I can guarantee you, if you get into the corners and you try to carry on 10 miles an hour in a bunch of twisty corners, unless you're a special kind of operator, you're going to be breaking things. And then guess what happens? That causes issues because you got to understand, you got to have enough speed to process the snow. And a lot of times in the corners, that's where a lot of times the corners do not set because the speed to process that snow is not there because you are slowing down. So that snow doesn't, and people say, what do you mean warm up the snow? You're not warming up the snow. Yes, you are. When you process that snow, you are warming that snow up. So once it hits that pan and gets flat, it has a chance to cool down. It doesn't take a lot to cool down to harden. And so when we get into the corner, we start pushing corners in, the snow a lot of times just doesn't warm up enough, but you have to slow down because you have to articulate the blade, get that thing in there. And there's a lot of times where you have to back up around that corner. That's another reason by grooming at night, because then you can, when you come in the corner, you make the corner and you can't get all the snow down. If you back up and do it again, you have a chance to get that snow back down inside that corner and then continue on. So the speed is very varied. And I tell people, you need to go as fast as you feel comfortable, and that there's a limit that you don't want to, because sometimes some of these drags just blow the snow out the side. And I've seen that where operators just cruising, blowing snow out over top of the side rails. And guess where that's going? Off the trail. So it's not cause. That's not effect enough for the trail to stay, because as an operator, you're going to spend time, and you have to spend time on the trail to do a good job. A lot of times your name is going to be tagged to that trail if people get to know who some of these operators are. So you need to spend time to do the job properly. At the same time, if you can pick the pace up on a straight area, that gives you a chance to get down the trail, and you may have to spend that extra time you have to work on a corner. You want to add something to that, Don?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I've been reading a lot on Susie Tracks and that, and they're advertising 6 to 7 miles an hour for grooming. So it'll average out between 4 and 8, somewhere in there.
But if you start doing averages, I did average on a snowmobile trip the other day. And we were running 45, 50, sometimes 65. And when we got straightened around, we got the time frame, got the mileage, we're doing 22 miles an hour on an average, you know? And so what we got to realize also, you've got bogeys and the tracks. And if you run that faster, or if you run it at 18 miles an hour, guess what's going to happen? It's going to heat the track up, and then it's going to put undue wear on that track and the bogeys. But at the same time, there's a constant speed of, I can see 3 to 10 to 11 miles an hour, because there's a lot of times you're going to be rooming at that 5, 6 miles an hour. And if it's really bad, if you got 4-foot moguls, you're not going to want to go anything over 5 miles an hour because it'll throw you out of the damn seat.
Right.
So again, keeping the moguls at bay keeps the doctor away, because now we're not taking and have to do some work on that piece of equipment because it just got beat. There's years ago, the Tuckers, the leaf springs on them, you could tell when the guy started really running them too fast, because next thing you know, leaf springs started to break. And they didn't break because you're running on smooth trails. That's for damn sure. Because they were running too fast for conditions.
Don, and just a comment on that, and down here by us, I've got some spots that I got an inch on each side of that tractor. And I tried it when
Yes.
I train people, I tell them, hey, look, your speed's your enemy. It's a lot easier to go too slow and recover than going too fast and not recover. I had a guy over by Green Lake. He got frustrated. He wanted to drive. He pretty near went off the bridge. So you try to tell him, hey, you can recover from going too slow to fast, but not too fast to slow. It's a lot
You
easier.
bet.
So that's one of the techniques we use.
There you go. Here's another take off of that would be is if you're moving 4 to 5 miles an hour and you have a slight incline or decline on the trail. And here's a prime example, going across the bridge. Obviously, the ideal thing is to keep the snow to about 1.5 feet on bridges. That way it protects the bridges, but you're not building the damn thing up way too high. When you come into a bridge, if you're running, say, 4 miles an hour, and you're going across the bridge, and all of a sudden that drag starts to slide, if you get an increase in speed, that drag 95% of the time will pull back behind the groomer, and you'll be able to continue through the bridge. But if you're already running 10 miles an hour, how in the hell are you going to go any much faster? You're not. So that's another issue that over the years we found out that can help you to correct an issue that all of a sudden, oh my God, here we go again. And I talked about bridge thickness of snow. If you can keep 1 foot of snow on the bridges, that's a great way to do it, because that'll protect the decking. And it also, when you use rubber to try to protect the decking, that also helps. But again, like you said, speed can be a very bad enemy because you can't correct fast enough.
Well, if you're gonna use a blade, you don't want to use much speed anyway. You can't
Yeah.
operate it.
Exactly. And that's the other thing is, my question is, every snowmobiler wants to ride dead center of the damn trail.
Right.
And so 80% of snowmobiles run dead center of the trail. Me personally, I run to the far right because guess what? I get a better ride out there. But so if that continues and that snow is always beat in the center and you don't use the blade to pull that snow and try to flatten that trail across, that drag, and I can't even illustrate this, but that drag sets flat until you have a incline or decline to the center, and that drag is going to drop to the center. So if you continue to do that, all you do is you're digging the center deeper when you're grooming. So if you take that front blade and utilize that front blade like it's supposed to be used and push the snow to the center, it's going to keep the drag flatter. And so hence that'll take care of a lot of the dishing. And then when you come into a corner, that inside corner, the very inside corner may be up 8 to 10 inches from about 3 foot out. And then the outside corner's got whatever you got banked up. So what happens is it pushes the snowmobiles into the center of the corner instead of staying in the inside. It's not so detrimental on the outside because you can run that outside. But a lot of times that snowmobile gets sucked into that center. So again, if you don't work the corners properly, guess what? You're going to have a dish problem, and it gets tiresome. My wife complains about that a lot, that, you know, running on the road, she's like, she's always fighting that inside handlebar because the trail's not flat. Now, a lot of this also stems from the way the trail is before snowmobile season. A lot of the trails in the UP, a lot of them are just kind of like 2 tracks. And so if you don't work that trail before it freezes and try to flatten that whole trail out, you're going to have issues, because guess what? You're already starting with an improper surface, just like the corners. If you can work the corners before snowmobile season and get the berm back and try to get that corner flat, it's going to be a lot easier all winter long to keep that corner flat. Because we're fighting it already, because snowmobiles tendency to kick the snow out. And if you have a berm before you start, you're going to have a berm to fight with, and you're not going to get it flat because that berm is going to freeze, and then that's the way it's going to be.
You have a question from Scott?
Yep, go ahead.
Well, it's more of a comment. I have found over the years, if we have a lot of snow and you have a decent base, I push all the snow off the corner, because every day the snowmobiles give it back to me. And I find that the corners are a lot safer that way. Because if you take all the snow, you know, you've already got an icy hard base in the inside of the corner, and you try to put that snow on there every day, they just kind of push it out and give you a big bank again. So what I get about the middle of the season, I shove all the, I unhook the drag, and I go with the tractor and I push all the snow in the woods. And it just makes it a lot nicer and a lot safer corner. Because I've seen banks so high that the outside sled is hitting the inside sled. I saw a guy hit another person. They hit helmet to helmet because they were built up so high. So
Why, Scott, why were they built up that high? Because nobody pushed the corners back in, correct?
well, that's what you
why
get,
they're built?
because you get operators that don't know how to use the blade, and it just keeps getting higher. And that's why when I go out, I shove it all off. And by that time, it's pretty hard and icy. And you can't do nothing with it anyways. So that's just my take on corners.
Yep. Thank you. Anybody else have anything?
I don't see any more hands.
Okay, so
Oh,
Yeah.
Scott Nessel. Scott Nessel's got a question or a comment.
Yeah, we had kind of a unique situation just last week. I'm from St. Helen, and we've had a pretty crappy snow year. Probably only been out grooming a couple times a month. But last week we got kind of a icy, sleety crap, and it actually created a really super hard, slippery base. And Thursday night we got 5.5 inches of fluffy snow, and so we decided to go out and pan what we had, even though it was fluffy. And when I got out there, I know there'd been one sled down the trail, and it looked like he was just blowing a trench down through there because the snow was so light. Our theory behind it was thinking that by panning it, we'd get the air blowed out of it, and at least have a little bit of snow on the trail for people to ride. And we did that with the pan. I'm wondering if there's any guys that use rollers. We're talking about building a roller instead when we have conditions like that. It'd save a little wear and tear on the pan anyways. And I just wondered if anybody had any input on that sort of thing. And it worked out pretty good, as we ended up having snow on the trail all weekend. And I don't think we would have if we would have done nothing.
years ago, there was an attempt to try to do rollers. I kind of went to the wayside. The theory of that rolling, it's great. I guess in early season, instead of just trying to pan and try to roll it in, we had a chance to get a hold of a roller here several years ago, and it just didn't work out. So I would like to try that. I mean, I know once you get enough snow that I think the rollers wouldn't work as well, but in the beginning of the season, you know, bottom line is a lot of guys say, well, we'll just let the snowmobilers pack the snow in. I'm going, I don't know if you ever seen snowmobiles go down the road or the trail. They tendency to they blow the snow off. And me personally, I just soon capture it anyhow. And I mean, that's the reason why we do a lot of panning early, is try to capture that snow so we don't lose the snow. And packing, you know, that's something that we dabbled a little bit. We just never got a chance to do a lot of that. And I think that maybe that's something else that we need to take a look at. That's a possibility, but there's a lot of things that it's got to come play. You know, do you want to do tires, or do you want to do a steel face roller? Yeah, it's only going to pack so much anyways, because let's face it, it's not like gravel. We have clay to really bind it together. So it would be, I think some of it have to be conditions too, but
Oh, yeah.
I would not say that I would never want to do that, because I like to try just to see exactly how it worked. So
I'm thinking with our conditions in our area, specifically how things worked out this year. If we would have been able to start out rolling in the snow we had, we probably could have maintained this a lot longer. Even though we had some warm-ups and
yeah,
stuff like that. And that, I was just curious if there'd been much experience. We're going to do it. We're going to try it. And we're going to build something with the super single tires that they put on semi-trailers now.
yep.
We're going to fabricate it ourselves. But I mean, there was a lot of people thinking we shouldn't have wasted our time. But if we wouldn't have done anything, 4 or 5 more sleds would have blown all the snow off the trail, and we'd had nothing to work with other than solid ice.
I guess what I like to say is, once you guys start that, if you keep me in the loop, I'd be interested to see what's going on with that.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, we'll put you down for presentations for next year for Groomer Workshop.
Let me get some practice at it first, and then we'll give it a shot.
Okay. Well, if it's really cool, we'll have you bring it up to Groomer Workshop, because next year we got to go back to in person.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so go ahead. Don, trying to say something?
No, I was just gonna comment on the roller thing. I've seen people take a culvert and center a pipe inside the culvert and pour it full of concrete and put a bearing on each end and you know, and make a tongue out of it and use it for a roller. And early in the season, it seemed to work. I wouldn't
Cool.
recommend it during the season, but I guess early in the season when you're packing the first or second time out, that helps get a base in the trails.
That's what we're hoping.
Yeah, say down in
Whatever
Lower,
works.
they pack all year. Right, Terry? You guys have to pack lots of times during the year down here. We go from green to white, to green to white.
Hey, Scott, I got one thing for you.
Rob
Yes.
Porter, Lewiston.
Scott, what we found the last couple weekends in Lewiston, we had the same conditions, that 5 inches of lake effect snow that, you know, blows around and everything. We're using trail master drags, and what we found is, rather than panning, if you actually put it down so the front blades are they're not cutting, they're just moving the snow and they're homogenizing it through the drag itself and making that heat and that creating that moisture that Don was talking about. We found that 5 inches of snow, we processed it into a real usable trail rather than just panning it.
And you're keeping the pan up off the ground, though, you're saying?
Nope, the pan was down, but we were keeping the nose of the drag just ever so slightly above, so it was catching the snow. It wasn't digging. It was rolling the snow over back and forth, homogenizing it together, creating that friction, and then sending it out the back of the pan. And we turned out some beautiful trails, but you had to have that flat dirt first to be able to do that.
Right, right. Yep.
And rather than rolling it, because I've researched on rollers left and right, and because that's, I had the same thought process watching some of the Wisconsin clubs and some of the clubs in Michigan too, and we really found out the last couple weekends that we were able to produce a really decent trail with moderate lake effect snow, and we were pretty happy with it.
Well, hopefully I get another chance to try it that way this year.
Yep. Hit me up if you want some other ideas too, and
I will.
I can kind of talk in depth a little bit more about it. We were pretty happy.
Hey,
Thank
Scott,
Karen,
Yes.
I got one more. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna let Scott know that I did do that with the drag this weekend when I was farming it. Just the nose of it down just enough to touch. And the middle blades were hitting, but not, it wasn't per se tearing anything up. You seen it, Scott, you wrote it.
Yeah, that's right. Chris was the other groomer that went out after that snow, and he went the other direction than I did, and that's good to know. Good to know. We had a decent trail all weekend, so it's what we did helped, but we were hoping to come up with something a little easier to deal with, and maybe not have to mess with the drag as much. But hopefully if we get a little bit more lake effect, like Rob's saying, we'll try that again. We can only hope.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think, Kyle, you're breaking up really hard. Try it again. No. Can you hear him, Don?
No, I can't hear him. It's just fuzzy.
Yeah,
It's coming through real fuzzy.
it's
Yeah.
stamky, Kyle. You want to try to use the chat? Or text me, Kyle. You can text me as well. Unless,
Hey, here's the big question. Is there any time that there is too much snow? And I'll say yes. Over the years, if you get any more than a foot of snow, it's great to see, but trying to deal with that much snow all at once, unless you have very little traffic and where that snow has a chance to really set, because a lot of times when you have that much snow or more, it's not not much moisture in that, and it's all dry. And then trying to keep the trail smooth is crazy, and you'll find moguls big time after that. So is there too much snow? Me personally, I hate to say it, but yeah, once you get over a foot of snow, it's a bear to deal with, and you better be ready to start grooming. You need to groom every day and hope to heck that you don't have a lot of snow. But the issue lies is once you get that much snow and the snowmobilers know you got that snow, guess what? They're going to be there because they're going to want to ride on it. So it's real difficult to keep and maintain a trail if you get over a foot of snow and you continue to get the snow. Just a little bit of food for thought, because I've seen it many times over the years where we get a lot of snow. It's great until we get a lot of snowmobilers, and then it's really difficult to maintain that trail.
what Kyle was trying to say was Kyle's with Pure Marquette Club, and they use a roller and have great success with building their base. So they've been using a roller.
Okay.
Rob Katona has a comment of several years ago, we got 40 inches of what I call cascade concrete. The clubs needed dozers to clear the trails. Well, Rob, I'm jealous because I would love to see that. My best one was Groomer Workshop one year, and we got 24 inches of snow overnight. I thought I was in heaven. The trucks couldn't even push it. It was amazing. They used the groomers. We were in Munising at Billy Ramsey's place, and It was unbelievable. There was so much snow. Unbelievable. Oh,
Yeah, the problem they had is that all the trees came down with it.
oh yeah, that's bad. That's bad.
So Karen, I think we've covered quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot of different
Hmm?
things that we could chat about. It's tough to try to chat about some of this stuff because you really need hands-on.
I would
I think-
like, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to talk to you a little bit about groomer safety. Don, I know you've had some pretty scary things out there happen, and what happens with breakdowns?
Okay, well, breakdowns, let's face it. I have never really seen a groomer breakdown between June and November. They all run perfectly. Of course, they're in the groomer barn. So it's a mechanical, and mechanical is going to fail. The bottom line, I think Carl and the rest of the equipment subcommittee can test to this, is the best maintenance we do is the best thing that we can do. Because if you don't do maintenance, you are going to break down. I mean, it's not if, it's when. And you can have the greatest maintenance program in the world, and you're going to have breakdowns. Along with the breakdowns, you really need a game plan of what you're going to do. Prime example, you have a tie rod end break on a tucker. Well, that doesn't happen too often because they've beefed a lot of that up. But years ago, tie rod end would break. And again, some of it was our own issue because we didn't even think about changing tie rod ends. We never broke the front plow, so we didn't have a problem there. But all that work that front end did, all that jiggling, the tie rod end just finally wore and snapped. So now you're out on the trail, tie rod end snaps in the front of that tucker. You pretty much have to come along that track straight, and you need to secure it, and then you're going to just limp to the nearest crossroad to try to get picked up. Unless you're going to try to change that out in the middle of nowhere where it's already a bear and it's 25 below. And usually that's what happens when you have breakdowns. It is colder and cold. So first of all, your operators really need a ditty bag. They need to make sure they have warmer clothes in a bag. So if they do have a breakdown, they can change. And if they can fix what's broke, that's great. They can do it there. If they have the parts, and 95% of the time you don't. But even if you don't, you need to be able to keep warm. Sometimes you can have that unit still run. Sometimes you can't. It all depends on what happens. So safety for the operator is a must. You need to have gloves and a hat. You're not going to need it while you're grooming, but when you break down, you have to think about, hell, a couple candles can keep a cab warm. And, if you have a good operation, the guys are going to know when you should be at certain points or be back. And if you're not, they're going to be going, maybe we got to send somebody. And nowadays there's so much traffic that you're going to most likely have a snowmobile come by. But if you don't, it happens. So you need to protect your operators, and they need to protect themselves too. Okay. So also, if you break down, most of the time you're probably in a corner or in a bad area where the visibility is a real short distance. So what we've done over the years, we tried to use the old traffic triangles. All that was just a target for snowmobilers, and they just shatter them. So what we ended up doing, we took 5/8 inch re-rod and welded to the back of the drag on both sides and put 6 to 8 to 10 cones on there. So if we needed them, we could use traffic cones and put the traffic cones out in the front and the back, just like a semi would do, just to alert the oncoming traffic snowmobilers. And then of course there's hazard markers and flash, blinking flash, what's great. If you can get them, and they've come a long ways because they used to only last about 3 to 4 hours, but now they last a long time. So that's very important to be able to do that, because everybody's, well, why don't you just leave your lights on? you can leave your lights on for a while. But if you run that battery down, guess what? How the hell are you gonna get that thing started again? You're gonna have to carry jumper cables with you. What are you gonna jump it with? Your snowmobile? I doubt that. Unless you bring another groomer out there to assist. So that's another issue you gotta think of. So all the alternatives is to make sure you have hazard lights, cones. Make sure you get a cone. The other thing now with social media is, hey, get on that internet and let these people know that you have a groomer down on the trail. And that's very important.
There's lights too, right, Don? You were talking about the yellow amber lights that will stay lit inside
Yes,
there.
matter of fact, yeah, but they make them now that
Right.
they'll last a very long time. In years past, they worked, but not real long. But now these new lights with the LEDs, they don't suck much juice down, and that works great. And I'm trying to remember. I was just trying to remember the name of the company. I was just reading an article on that. Now I lost the name of it, but they make them. They're not that expensive, and maybe that's something that we ought to talk to Richard about. Maybe that should be something we ought to take a look at when we have new equipment to be able to come up with that. If not, the clubs can afford it. It just it's something to think about.
They could request it with their Miracle Millions dollars. That's a safety item, and that definitely would apply. So for you clubs that don't have those in your groomers, that would be something for you to request with your grants, is exactly that. Because we can do safety items as well. And Rick Conway's got his hand up.
Yeah, Don, you might not like to hear this, but we went with a company called Groomer Tracker, and we put them in our groomers. And as a coordinator, I can track him, and if he sets for more than 15 minutes, that's plenty of time to eat out there. I know something's wrong, and a lot of our areas does not have good cell service, and it really helps me as being a coordinator, knowing, well, he's going along too fast, or he's going too slow, or he's been sitting, and I can call him out on it. But it's a company, it costs, and then people subscribe to it. It costs $10 a year, and the club gets $5 of that back. And people were skeptical about it. Well, you're gonna have people following the groomer. Well, the way I ride snowmobile, I'd be right over top of that groomer, but nobody wants to follow a groomer. And they know where we're at. They can plan their ride, but I'm not a salesman for Groomer Tracker, but I'm done.
But you know what? I mean, that's a safety issue that hey, is important. If that operator, that he sets and eats or whatever he does, takes 10, 15-minute break. If he sits for longer than that, you know damn well that there's an issue out there. And I guess the name of the game is, hey, as a coordinator, you want to protect your operators. You want to make sure your program is run properly, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, again, that's another safety net could be used. I know there's been years past that I wish I had somebody that would have known that it was broke down.
Oh yeah.
Or, walking 8-10 miles.
No worse feeling, when we didn't have it, you're sitting there and I don't have any bars on my phone.
Nope.
Now I'm going to have to walk.
Yes.
What was the cost of that again, Rick?
It was, I don't know, Carl might be able to jump in on this because they went with it too, but if the public wants to buy it and subscribe to it, it's $10 a year for each trail system. So
each unit?
Each sponsor. Nope, each sponsor, Don. So because Kalkaska's on, if they had 3 groomers, they have 2 groomers, they have 5 groomers. Their whole group is on the Groomer Tractor. And I can say from down here, Southwest Michigan, I ride in Kalkaska. I want to see what's going on their trails. I subscribe to him. His club gets a piece of it, and Groomer Tractor gets a piece. But I don't think there was a cost to your club
No,
no Unless they're cost to the
no,
There
no.
is no cost to the club to do that. Groomer Tracker's making their money by the public buying into Groomer Tracker and watching them.
I got you.
So for me, I would pay $10 and I would pick up Kalkaska and I would pick up Cadillac and I may pick up Lake County and all the areas around me, Allegan, wherever. And so it's $10 a year for each one that you want to watch. So for the groups that are out there riding, it's a great thing. It's a very nice, program.
Well, if we don't get this GPS stuff, in groomers, I think that's probably a real good idea because it helps the coordinator that wants to know where his groomers are,
Yep.
Exactly.
I think,
There's
you would
several
mind
clubs
to
that
send it
have it
out.
already that have signed on to Groomer Tracker. There's a few of them in the UP as well.
Yeah, if you could send that information out, I'd appreciate it.
Groomer Tracker?
I'm
Yes,
sending it to you right now, Don.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, Carl?
Carl hasn't had it as long as we have, but he knows more about it than I do.
Carl, if you would send that to me and I can send it out to everybody that's here and registered for the workshop.
Sure can.
Yeah, I like the idea because, years ago we were promised this GPS system and, and I understand what's going on. So we got to have something so the coordinators can track their groomers.
I think Jessica another night is going to give us an update on that. That's
Okay.
coming. Stay
Good.
tuned, folks. Stay
Okay.
tuned.
It's in your inbox.
Thank you. So we covered that. The other one was adjusting the drags, the fins on the drags of the knives. They've been called. I've heard them called a million different things. How do they know where to adjust those as they wear down? Is that something you work with your manufacturer on? Is it also if it's Arrowhead or if it's a Doobie or if it's do you have to take it back to them? Is that something they can do in-house?
A lot of times that can be done in-house. I think the newer drags now that you can adjust the drag depth cut. Once the knives are secured to the moldboard, then there's adjustments from there. I know Doobie drags, that can be adjusted. I know Mogul Masters can. Just lost the name of them. So most of them can be adjusted, and it all depends on what you're looking to cut, because there's serrated blades, and then there's obviously just regular grater blades set off of that, and that all adjust to where you're going to want to cut, how deep you're going to want to cut, and to where once that cutting edge is even with the side rails, guess what? It's not going to cut anymore because the side rail is going to hold it up. You won't be able to cut. So once you get that drag into your home station, that manufacturer needs to explain how that drag works. Because each drag works a little bit differently, and so where the cutting edges are set is as individual setting, and depending on the snow conditions also.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you don't have the cutting edges down deep enough, you wear out the side rails.
Yep, and exactly. Here's another thing that we did years ago is to even with the knives adjusted properly, we started noticing wear, and so what we did is we took hardened steel and pieced it along the rails and had it welded on, which helped save the side rails.
Right.
And now a lot of times the manufacturers, they're doing that as it is, the AR10 or whatever they're using to use that makes a huge difference. The other thing is, a lot of people don't realize the pan on the drag itself. That's a very important piece of that component on that drag. How that pan rolls, how the snow comes through there, and is that pan flat across? Because if it's not flat across, then you're not going to get a smooth trail. You're going to get imperfections where you shouldn't have the imperfections. And that's where a lot of times, I think some of these drags need to be taken a look at, brought back to the manufacturer and nothing else. The rest of the drag take a look at, but that pan really needs to take a look at and maybe redone would help out a lot. And that's where we make it save some money there too. Because it's all about money. We know that for a fact. We've been fighting that issue for many years.
Go ahead, Carl.
Well, in the last couple of years, running around Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, it's amazing how many drags that I've seen that like Don said, the front end of the side rail is wore beyond the hardened metal on the bottom, and their cutting edges are an inch above it, and they just keep trying to drive it in the ground. Well, you're never going to go below your side rails. And yeah, it's amazing how many people, I think that's one of the biggest things right there with doing your oil change every year is make sure your cutters are somewhat even and uniform around the groomer, however you decide to set them to cut, and make sure they're below your, at least your front ones need to be below the board so you can cut out the moguls, because it won't go any deeper than you let it go.
It seems to me in 17 and 18, we heard a lot about adjusting the drags. That really came into play at the groomer workshops. There was lots of conversations on that and how to adjust them properly and so that they work together to process that snow as you said, rather than just dragging it around behind you. So it should be tossing it around in that drag.
In the
That's one of the most important parts of the drag is the cutters. And the pan, of course.
Yep.
You're right, Don. The most important is the cutters, and they need to be adjusted, and the clubs need to speak with the manufacturer and get his take on this, because, like we said earlier, if the cutters are not below the rails, you're not going to cut very far, and it's not going to do the job it's designed to do.
One of the things down here, Terry, I know you deal with almost so many multiple landowners. I know that a lot of times that you're and Allegan close down trails to protect the landowners' properties, and sometimes the riders don't get that. They don't understand, what they're bothering with, and yet they don't deal with those landowners.
Yeah, we got 150 landowners with the council. I'm not sure how many Allegans got. We had a situation this year where we just got a dust of the snow. So a fellow went out with his snowmobile, got it. It broke down. So then this is a wheat field, and they took their truck out in the wheat field. So we compensated the farmer and all that. But yes, and how to get that out there to them, we do it all the time. We try to communicate 4 inches, but it is a problem, especially down here with the crops.
Right. Keeping those landowners happy.
No easy answer.
No, and trying to keep your landowners happy. And when you have 150 landowners, I don't know how many of your northern Michigan or UP, I bet you don't deal with 150 landowners, do you, Don?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think, go ahead, Don.
We had 125 miles and we had 78 landowners.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a pretty common thing all over.
Yeah, we got 87 miles with 150 landowners. A lot of them are just going across the driveway, for Pete's sakes, but they're landowners.
Yeah, that's something to be said, because without your landowners and without them, your landowners understanding the program, you just certainly don't want them pissed off, because once they jerk their lease, now you're in trouble. Now, so we got to be a little careful and take care of our landowners and keep them happy.
Now, whether it's done any good or not, we've added verbiage about 4 inches of snow, all that stuff. I suppose it does good for some people, but most of the time when we're having problems, it's the locals. The locals go off the trails, not the visitors, it's the locals. And they're going from their farm to wherever they're going, and that's where it really comes. And sometimes we have to contact them locals, and which we did with this people with the DNR, and say, hey, you got to stop doing this. We're going to lose this trail system. So it usually is the locals, and a lot of times if you put it out to the club, hey, we're having this problem, they know who it is, and we go talk to them.
Right. And most of you clubs, you see that too, that a lot of times when you have problems, it's your locals. I know Bill used to say that all the time to me because they know the area. They know the roads, they know where they're going, and so they're the worst offenders.
You know, visitors don't know where they're going, so they stay on the trail.
Right. Right. And that's what Bill used to say all the time. Those were the only questions that were sent in to me. I don't have any other questions. I don't have any other comments that were sent in. I see we got what here in the chat. Oh, he's just this is from Nick, and he is saying that he'd like to see all the grant sponsors in Michigan sign on with Groomer Tracker because it is such a nice program. So, and the club gets money back from it. So that's kind of a cool thing. Little fundraiser for the club. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
I'd like to address one thing here before we go. Even though we are volunteer, a lot of them are volunteers, some get paid. We're clubs that are here to groom. Very few of us are riding clubs. Most of these are grant sponsors that groom. I suggest that you listen to this and you do what you want with it, but I suggest that every year, when you guys get ready to groom, that you sit down and go over all your safety stuff and make sure you get it in writing. Whatever you talked about at that meeting, you get it and put it in writing, and then you have that operator sign that piece of paper stating that he is aware of this is what our safety program, this is what we expect from you, and then file that away and keep it. Because if you don't, it will get you, okay? So even though we're grooming guys, we're all buds, we all know what we're supposed to be doing, and we know that we think safety. Tell you guys right now, as a favor, make sure that every year you get that in writing. It doesn't have to be nothing lengthy, but address all the safety issues you talked about and what do you expect from your operators, and have them sign and date that and put it away in a file and keep it. Thanks, Karen.
Sounds like the voice of experience there, Mr. Reed.
I would like to share one more thing, Karen, about as far as compensation. Everybody struggles with the volunteers, and we have some volunteers, and they don't make a lot of money and all that. So we did come up with a program for reimbursement. We budget X amount of dollars. We pay like 45 cents a mile for the operators to go and from the groomer. If they have to stop for lunch, we cover it up to 15. That compensation package has really helped maintain and keep some of our groomer operators that just, are struggling sometimes. So I just wanted to share that we don't pay them, but we do compensate them for their costs.
And I was hoping that Liz was going to be on here tonight, because there is an insurance that you can get, and I meant to talk to her today, and I just got way out of bounds. I couldn't do it, but there is insurance policy that is out there for volunteer workers, besides if you actually pay your operators or whatever. But there is insurance out there that helps protect the volunteer, and she knows all about it. And that's something that, go ahead, Karen.
They were at group workshop in 2020, I believe, Don. Am I right?
I know she talked about it. I don't remember, exactly if they would,
I
it
wanna
could have
say
been, I just
all-
don't remember. But because
All state,
Liz,
all Mart, all. I can get that information for you guys from Lizzie and find
Yes.
out who that is.
and it's not that expensive. Because I can guarantee you, you do not want to be drugged through the keyhole. It is not fun. So, just word of wisdom. I thought we were doing great stuff, and we were. It just when attorneys get involved, you can be the best guy there ever was, but you'll be a dirtbag. So, again, just food for thought. Maybe it doesn't concern you. All I'm telling you is just log it stuff down because you're going to need it if something happens. Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts, questions, ideas? Rick Conway's got his hand up. Look at you go tonight, Rick.
I know. A lot of knowledge there, Don. I really enjoyed it. Great job.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. You guys did, you and Terry both did a great job tonight. There's a lot to technique. I think it's not just running down the trail. I think a lot of you guys already know that. I think the other thing that I would like to pass on, and I can freely say, is that if you have questions after this, if you're struggling with something within the club, within your equipment, whatever, these guys are a walking book of knowledge for you. They're a phone call away, and they're happy to help. They've done this. Don, I know, slept, drank, all of it for a lot of years and learned a lot. He's trained a lot of people. He's one of the greats, as well as Terry is down here in the lower. Definitely different grooming down in the lower than it is in the upper. It's a totally different ball game. So for you that are down here in the lower, Terry's a wealth of information for you, some tricks for the trade and things like that that can help you. Maybe if you're struggling in the early seasons, how to get that trail going. There's a lot of knowledge out there, guys, and that's one of the things we're missing with this not being in person. The networking that went on at that event, if you haven't ever been there, is unbelievable. There's a huge area, there's lots of tables, and you'll see two people sitting at a table having a chat, and pretty soon there's 15 people standing around listening to that conversation going on about grooming, about equipment, about insurance, about interpersonal relationships, club problems, you name it. There's always somebody there to help you. And that's the group that we have here with our sponsors.
Karen, I'd like to say another thing here too.
Good.
When you're a grooming entity and your neighboring grooming entities have issues with breakdowns, sometimes that individual may not call and need help. But if you reach out and make a phone call to that individual, he may accept your help, because when your clubs meet trails, you all get affected by one trail not being groomed and one trail being groomed. Years ago, if you went from, I'll use Seney, you went from Seney to Grand Marais and back, that was an all-day trip many moons ago. Now that's a quick breakfast stop to get to Marquette. If you get to know your neighboring clubs and help them out if they need help, because at some point you may need help. And that's done a lot of good over the years. So if you haven't done that, get to know your neighbor. And if there is a little issue, bury that damn thing, because we're all about snowmobiling. And if that can help your trails get through a day or so of breakdowns, it'll save you an ass whooping in the seat of a groomer.
We have several groups this year that are brand new. Started out December. The club walked away. And they're 3, 4, or 5 of them picked up the gauntlet and ran with it. There's one in southern Michigan. There's one up near the bridge, and they're plugging along. They're doing good. Are they doing everything perfect? Possibly not, but they're learning. And those are the guys that are going to need that help. You know, they're going to need your expertise. So don't be afraid to call me if you need help. I can put you in touch with the right person in the right areas to get you going. I've got, you know, people that are great all over the state. So Mr. Conway's got his hand up again. Or did you not bring it
Yeah,
down?
back on what Don said. Our neighbor to the north, Jordan Valley, Carl runs that, and we get together quite often, at least on the phone, and discuss whether we're going to do this, whether we're going to do that. And it has really helped, I think. Years ago, I guess there was wars between our club, but regardless, we get along great now.
Good thing.
He might not think so.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
Jury's out.
I just a little, another tidbit, I guess, in Marquette County, there's 5 different groomers. 5 different sponsors, and we meet once a month all winter long and swap notes and whys and all the other good stuff that goes along with it. And we have a good, as I mentioned last night, Big Bay has 2 groomers and both of them are broke down with tracks, and Moose Country donated one of their groomers to Big Bay. So that really means a lot to me. So just coordinating all the different sponsors in Marquette works out great. Marquette, Alger, and Berga. So.
Sweet.
Exactly. Well, like I said, Don, I told you that you'd have them spellbound. I think that you did. I think you did a great job. Terry, I think you were a wealth of information as well. We appreciate your time for being here. And if we don't have any other questions, I think we can all just go sit in our chair and have a drink.
Thanks for the opportunity. You all take easy now.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Don. I appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
man, for putting this together.
Say good night, Dick.
Good night.
There's a duck walking across the road. Good night.
Come on, Don. One
Night.
duck joke. One duck joke.
You
Come
just
on.
missed.
All right,
Ah, he left.
Nope.
the duck. Are you there?
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, there he is.
Ah. Okay, there's a duck walked into a shoe store and looked at the proprietor, and the proprietor said, "Mr. Duck, what can I do for you?" "Well, I'm looking for a new flipper." And the shoe salesman says, "You know, Mr. Duck, we really don't have flippers, but we have clogs." And the duck looked at him and says, "You know, I'm not a dancing duck, so I need to go some other place. You guys have a good night."
Not a clog dancer. Thanks, Don. For those of you that haven't been at the workshop, when Don emceed, he told so many duck jokes, and I can't remember any of them. Once there was one about a grape, about something about grapes. Remember that one, Rick?
Oh, that's the staple.
You remember it, Carl?
No, I wouldn't even want to try to recite that one.
All
He
I
had
can
some-
remember him
he-
saying is in
He
that
had so
mic,
many.
in his big booming voice was, "You got any grapes?"
I remember part of that.
Think about it,
Think,
Karen. We'd normally just be meeting each other about now.
yes, we would. For our
Yeah.
student support the sport. You guys
Yeah.
are, if any of you haven't been to that, those are really great Tuesday night. Sometimes they turn into a bitch session. You never quite know what we're going to talk about. Sometimes they're really candid and they're small group, and we get the pulse on what's going on out there. It's not just grant sponsors, it's not board of directors, it's just average individuals. I often have some officers on to answer questions, as well as Jessica is often on with us to answer questions from DNR that she can, of course. So those are great meetings. You can see the calendar on our website, and they're on Tuesday nights, and they start at 7. And I kick them off, and I'm not kidding. I kick them off at 9 o'clock. You gotta go. You gotta stop talking, Carl. It's time. It's 9 o'clock. I'm turning into a pumpkin. So they're kind of cool. Kind of a cool thing that we've been doing, and it works well.
They are super good.
Mm-hmm.
We have riders who have no idea what this program's about and what we do and why we do it. And they come in snorting mad, and by the time they left, they were going to Lansing to get more funds for us. And yeah, it's pretty special some nights.
Yep, it is. You just don't ever know what you're going to get because you never know who's going to sign in. There's only been one time I missed it. No one showed up. I got the night off. It's Christmas time. So Tuesday nights at 7. Like I said, they're twice a month. Sign in. Talk to us. Joe from New York, we'd love to hear more about New York and your program that you have going on there, as well as sharing secrets from what we have going on here as well. So on Tuesday nights, if you're around, hop on, give us a call. It's all through Zoom. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time. And again, you are the backbone. You are what keeps motorized recreation in Michigan, what the pristine level that it is. We are the top state in the snow states for trails. So I've been told that. I've been told that for 20 years from Bill Manson, and I never believed it. I just figured he was bragging, and went out to Congress a few times, and they're like, no, Michigan is the top notch with the land and the terrain that we have here. It's amazing because our trails are not on road. Most of them are not on roads. Most of them are through the woods. That's you guys putting them in. That's you guys signing them. It's you guys talking to landowners. It's you guys. We wouldn't have any of this without you. I thank you.
They keep logging by me and Rick, and we're going to be in fields here pretty soon now.
It'll grow back, Carl. It'll be okay.
Them darn stumps.
Yeah, trees and stumps.
That's a different night.
Yeah, I know.
That's Tuesday. Talk about stumps a lot on Tuesday nights.
I can imagine.
Those are good conversations. Carl has to take over on that one. Alrighty, thank you so much for coming, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome. My pleasure.